Your fridge has been making a noise for 6 weeks. Not a bad noise, just a new one, a low hum sitting slightly off from where it used to sit. You've already identified which component it probably is. You've already looked up the repair cost. You've cross-referenced it against the age of the unit and decided it's not worth fixing yet. You haven't mentioned it to anyone because there's nothing to mention. It's handled, mentally at least. In your head, that's basically the same thing. This is how most of your life runs. Something surfaces, you triage it, you file it, you keep moving. Problems don't pile up around you the way they seem to for other people. They get absorbed, quietly, efficiently, almost always alone, and usually before anyone else has even registered that there was something to deal with. People know this about you. They might not have said it in those words, but it's why they text you and not the group chat. It's why you're the one who gets the call when something actually breaks, not because you volunteered for the role, just because at some point it became understood. You're the one who handles things, and you've never given anyone a reason to think otherwise. What nobody thinks to ask, because why would they, you seem completely fine, is where the things you're carrying actually go. Most people, if they're being honest, don't have a clear answer to that, and most people have quietly decided that's just how they're built, that needing less is a personality trait, not a pattern, that independence is the same thing as preference. It isn't always, and the difference matters more than it's comfortable to sit with. There's a specific kind of person who learns, usually before they have the language to understand what they were learning, that the most reliable way to get something done is to do it themselves. For some people, it was because the adults around them were absent or stretched beyond what they could manage, but more often it wasn't even that clear. It was subtler, a household where needing things had a weight to it, a parent who was trying their best, but their best was already fully allocated, a moment where asking made the room harder, and you were perceptive enough, even young, to feel that shift and decide you'd rather not be the one who caused it again. So you adapted. You became the one who figured things out, who didn't add to the pile, who absorbed rather than expelled. And that worked. It genuinely worked. The adaptations served a real purpose in a real situation. The thing about adaptations, though, is they don't dissolve when the original conditions change. They harden. They become the operating system. So now you're 30-something or 40-something, and you are demonstrably, genuinely capable. You've earned that. It isn't a story you're telling yourself. But the internal logic running underneath all of it is still the one that formed when you were a kid in a situation that required it, still calculating, still quietly deciding that your need isn't quite justified enough to put in front of another person. Here's what that actually looks like past the point where it's easy to dismiss. It's not the big things. Big things you can frame as logistics, as problem solving, as something with a clear practical answer. It's the other kind. The kind where what you actually need is for someone to just sit with you in something that doesn't have a solution yet. That's where it gets almost physically uncomfortable. Someone tries to be there for you and you're already 3 moves ahead, summarizing the situation, identifying the next step, giving them an exit from the conversation before they've even settled into it. I've thought about it. I know what I'm going to do. I'm fine. Being held, it turns out, is harder than holding. There's research worth staying with here. In a 2008 study by Flynn and Lake, participants consistently and significantly underestimated how willing others were to help them, predicting far lower rates of willingness than actually occurred when they asked. The world was meaningfully more willing than people assumed. The problem was never availability, it was the internal cost of asking, what needing help would mean about them. For someone whose entire internal story is organized around being the capable one, that question keeps returning an answer they can't accept. So the need doesn't disappear. It gets processed the same way everything else does, quietly, internally, without anyone else in the room, filed, handled, moved past. The problem is that feelings aren't fridge components. You can't cross-reference them against a repair cost and decide they're not worth dealing with yet. And underneath all of that, the part that takes the most honesty to actually sit with, is a belief most people in this position have never said out loud, even to themselves, that showing up without it handled, without an answer, without already being mostly fine, is taking something from someone, not offering them a chance to give, taking. That belief didn't arrive from nowhere. It came from watching someone stretch too thin, or from being the one other people leaned on for long enough that leaning felt like a thing that belonged to other people, not you. The most striking part of all of it is this. People who operate this way are almost always exceptional at being there for others, genuinely. They show up, they stay, they don't make it feel like a transaction. They'd be offended, actually offended, if you suggested they'd ever make someone feel like a burden for asking. And they mean it, and they're right. And yet, they are completely, quietly convinced that the same would not be true if something shifted just now reading that. You already know why. The solution isn't learning to ask for help. That advice lands about as usefully as telling someone who hasn't slept properly in 3 years to just relax. The actual shift is slower and less satisfying than a piece of advice can hold. It's about genuinely, not performatively, questioning the story running underneath it. The one that says needing something makes you a weight. The one that the people in your life are there to receive what you can offer, not to offer anything back. That story was a reasonable reading of something real, but you are not in that situation anymore, and the people around you, the ones who call you specifically, who trust you with the 2 a.m. version of themselves, they are not waiting to feel burdened. They just don't know you need them, because you've never let the conversation go that far. That's not independence. That's a very old protection running on a very old logic in a life that has long since moved past the conditions that required it. The fridge is still making that noise. At some point you'll deal with it. That part isn't going anywhere. But occasionally, not always, not dramatically, you're allowed to mention the noise before you've already figured out what it is. You're allowed to not have it handled yet. You're allowed to let someone else stand next to you while you work out what to do. Not because you can't figure it out alone. You probably can. You usually do. But there's a version of your life where you don't have to, and that version has been available to you for a while. You've just been too busy handling everything to notice it was there.
If this landed somewhere real, subscribe. This channel is for the psychology that doesn't come up in easy conversations. The patterns that run so deep they stopped feeling like patterns a long time ago.